o'clock. And we have a quorum, so I want to welcome everybody to the joint meeting for the Rules and Open Government Committee and Committee of the Whole. And can we have a roll call, please?
Arenas, Cohen,
Here.
Davis, Peralez. Peralez,
Sorry, having trouble unmuting. I'm here.
thank you. Jones,
Present.
thank you.
Okay. So we are going to start out with the agenda for Tuesday, May 10th. And we are going to start out on pages 4 and 5. And 6 and 7. Eight and 9. 10 and 11. 12 and 13. And that is it. And there's an add sheet for the maker of the motion, but we're going to go to public comments first.
I have no hands up.
Great. We'll bring it back to the committee. Can I get a motion in a second, please?
Move approval.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Tony?
Arenas,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
Peralez,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
thank you.
Okay, so we're on to the agenda for Tuesday, May 17th, and we're going to start out on pages 4 and 5. And 6 and 7. And 8 and 9. And 10 and 11. And 12 and 13. And 14 and 15. 16 and 17. And 18 and 19. And 20. And that is it. I'm going to go to the public.
Blair Beekman,
Hi, Blair Beekman here. This is the first time I was able to see some of the May 17th council meetings. And like the May 10th, they have kind of a nice May feeling about them. I'm really looking forward to what the May 10th council meeting will be about. There'll be many items that I think can be of much interest to people, and just an all-around interesting time. Excuse me, I got my... Yeah, it should be a really interesting meeting on May 10th, and I just wanted to thank yourselves for that, and good luck in all our efforts to and how we're going to work on these issues. Thank you.
back to the committee.
All right, Councilmember Cohen.
Hi. I guess I have a question, Lee, about the schedule on that day. We have now moved the North San Jose hearing, which is an evening session, for that day. And we also had planned a special meeting for that day. So are they still both on the agenda for that day?
They are. We're trying to move the North San Jose item to be earlier in the day to accommodate the agenda, but most importantly, just accommodate staff. There are several staff that are out on an important issue later that day. So we were going to recommend that we start the 17th with the North San Jose item at 1:30.
And have that be noticed for the first item on the agenda, not after 6.
Correct.
And then we think that the rest of the meeting will be able to be done in time to have a special meeting in the evening.
It possibly could. I mean, the North San Jose thing and a few other items might take a little bit, so that agenda is a little tight.
Yeah, it's tight. I'm not sure about the need for times for us to rush that special hearing into that night in order to squeeze it in the midst of all of the budget hearings that are happening in those 2 weeks. But
Yeah, I mean, the special meeting or the expansion of municipal voting rights, and Tony can speak better to it than I can, but it's an initial kind of toe in the water of the different policy options that you might have, but it is considerable work and something that you probably wouldn't that you would not be able to act upon or implement within this fiscal year or even calendar year. So it is something that you as a council have flexibility if you'd like to move.
okay, so I guess maybe it's something for us to talk about at next week's rules committee about the overall schedule for then and when that makes sense to do in order to give it the time it deserves.
I would also like to note the professor who was going to give the presentation is not available on the 17th. He can provide a video of his presentation, but he will not be there to answer questions on the 17th. He has a graduation. I think the school he teaches at has graduation that night.
Well, I don't know that the special meeting agenda is even available to us to discuss today because it's not on the rules
Well,
committee agenda. So
It is listed on the agenda for the 17th.
is it?
Yeah, it's listed at 6 p.m. So
Guess I didn't
you guys
see it
already
there.
approved the content of the agenda last week and then scheduled it for the 17th, or 2 weeks ago, I think, is when you approved the text of the agenda. And then let me pull up, I'll show you the,
But I don't see it
so-
listed on the actual May 17th agenda that we're talking about moving right now.
it's here, it's
Okay.
noted,
Is it? Oh.
just right here.
Oh, I see the special study sessions listed at the beginning there.
Yeah, so you can talk about the
Oh, okay.
scheduling of it because it is there.
Yeah, I mean, the rules committee can direct us to move it to a later date or have us come back to a future rules committee with a proposed date if you'd like.
Okay, I mean, I think that would make more sense, but I want to hear what the rest of any of my colleagues on the rules committee have an opinion about it before.
Well, I agree with that as well, council member. I think it would make more sense to move it, particularly since the key person that we wanted to present is not even going to be available. So I'd be very supportive of that. And let's see.
So I mean, if you want, maybe the motion now should be moving approval of the agenda for the 17th and ask staff to come back with a proposal for when's the right time to do the study session.
Okay.
So I'll make that motion.
All right, so a motion, can I get a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. So I don't see other hands raised. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, hi, sorry, just to reiterate on that. So how will we, or I guess we're gonna have to come back to rules to discuss a date and do we know what other dates may be available at the moment?
Yes, we would need to agendize it through the rules committee. So we would be coming back. My sense is with what's in May and what's in June, that this would be something after summer, like in August or September.
Okay, and speaker wise, sorry, I missed that part on who it was that we were gonna be missing from that meeting.
Yeah, it's Ron Haydick. He is a professor at San Francisco State University, and he's written a book called Democracy for All, Restoring Immigrant Voting Rights in the United States. And he's agreed to present. He said he can submit a presentation on video, but he would not be able to be there to answer questions because there's a graduation at his school that night.
Got it. Okay, when do we expect this would come back to rules then, I guess, where we would be able to at least discuss it again. Because I do know that there would be a lot of community interest in potentially, chiming in on how soon or when the date might be. Obviously, we want to have the right people in the room too, but I want to make sure we can at least spread the info as well as possible on when we might know when this would come back for another discussion at rules.
How about I bring it back in 2 weeks? That way I can work with the professor and I can contact some of the CBOs for them as well and see what's a good date, maybe in August.
Okay. Yeah, that would be helpful. At least we can let anybody that is interested know that, the rules committee will take up this discussion. We may not know exactly a date, but hopefully we will, right? But at least we can give them that date
Yeah.
to direct them to. Okay, thank you.
Great. So I have a motion and a second. Tony?
Arenas,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
Peralez,
Yes.
Jones.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. On to the consent calendar. And we're going to go to the public first.
Mayor Beekman,
Hi, Blair Beekman here. I had a letter about the future of Cinco de Mayo and or what it would be like, not Cinco de Mayo, the Viva Calle and May Day Festival that was happening at the same time. I thought it went kind of well. It was kind of interesting, I thought. Good luck on how, there can be better open communication for all sides, how to talk about this day and what worked and what didn't. And hopefully we can do it again next year with better communication and understanding between each other. I think we can maybe be in good shape with this sort of idea. I'm always interested to make sure that we have real minimal practices of law enforcement and data collection and surveillance on such a day. And this could be the time to practice those sort of things and to practice the ideas of what is community policing as opposed to, it really can bring out how a community works together and police each other. Basically, I feel it can ask a whole bunch of good questions like that. So thank you for this day. My writing was like really not very good in my letter, and I'm sorry when my writing is sometimes awkward, and I wish I could say things better. Sometimes I don't, and just thanks for your patience in sometimes bad writing skills. I also wanted to write about or speak about your updates to your work plans. You have one about work to force issues and another item about the future of technology that, you're going to be, it's downtown parking issues again. And I will speak on this another time.
Diza Gonzalez with Somos Mayfair.
I have a question. Is this public comment?
This is public comment on the consent calendar item. It's not open forum.
Okay, then I'll wait for the open forum.
Okay, thank you. Back to the committee.
Great, thank you. Can I get a motion on consent calendar?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Tony?
All right, Arenas,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
Peralez,
Yes.
Jones.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, on to item C1, discuss city's position on SB9 lawsuit. And we're gonna go to the public first. Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak on this item?
Yeah, I'm gonna try Diza Gonzalez. Is this the item you wanted to talk about, or did you still want to wait for open forum?
No, I wanted to wait for open forum. Thank
Okay.
you.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. This is another item that I'm just going to give it my gosh darn best, and I'm going to flub it. And I'm sorry whose feelings I hurt on this, but I'm going to try to offer my own feelings and opinions on this item. That Raul Perales very nicely, Councilman Perales brought out, I think about this time last year, maybe in August of last year. There's a bit of uncomfort around SB 9 compared to SB 10. And I think over the year, Councilperson Perales has made some interesting choices and figured out ways that SB 9 and 10 can work together and we can work on its issues. And I hope in the debate of this between him and Supervisor Chavez that, I hope we can all learn to come to an agreement that SB 9 can be a bit more uncomfortable compared to SB 10, but that we're all trying to manage the best we can. Councilperson Davis simply wants to end it, and that's a different argument that I'm not quite engaging here. I'm trying to find the balance of how we work with what is, the legal precedence of this time. And I feel that from that, I'll be interested to hear what Deb Davis has to say, but from this, that I'm interested in how, mixed income ideas can really, I think, offer a real amount of help and flexibility to make the choices easier and how we have to work on SB 9 and 10 in our future. And the options that mixed income offers for a number of issues, I think is really impressive. And I'm just a bit surprised we don't more openly talk about it here in San Jose and the Bay Area. Good luck in how we can, as always. And thanks for your time and patience to hear me out on this item.
Tobin Gilman.
Hi, thank you. I'll just be very brief here. I'm calling in to support Councilmember Davis's memo. I realize that the council has spent time deliberating on the impact that SB 9 might have and how the city might implement it and how it might be addressed with historic districts and everything. And I also respect the fact that at least a couple of you, I know Councilmember Perales, for example, supports SB 9, and I respect that. But I would encourage you, regardless of what your opinion is about Senate Bill 9 specifically, to go ahead and agendize this issue, because there really hasn't been much of the broader discussion about the role of local government and how much control the city should have vis-a-vis the state. So for that reason, I hope you guys will be supportive of putting this on a future agenda. Thank you.
Sandra.
Request that the full council be allowed to discuss local controls and the pros and cons of state passing one-size-fits-all voting laws. A discussion to allow the public to understand the impacts of recent laws on our general plan would be useful for the public and will provide insight into the council members' thoughts. I'm not asking for a vote to join the lawsuit. I'm asking for a discussion so that I can better understand where people feel their roles are and where our elected officials' thoughts are. We haven't had a discussion like that. Do appreciate it if you could agendize it. I'm not asking for a vote. I'm just asking for you to have a discussion on it. Thank you.
Back to the committee.
Thank you. I was going to propose, since it is addressing potentially being involved in legal action, that we defer this to closed session and have a closed session discussion on this item. And Nora, I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
We can certainly do that if the council's considering either litigation or joining litigation.
But that's in your view,
It's appropriate
that's
to go to closed session for that.
right,
Yeah.
that's what I was asking.
Mhm.
That was the most appropriate venue. So, Councilmember Arenas.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to defer this over to closed session discussion. or move it forward.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Or not? Councilmember Perales?
Yeah, thank you. I think the reason I'm not interested in seconding that is I'm not interested in joining the lawsuit, and so I don't need to have a discussion of that. I already know that I would not like to join the lawsuit. This council majority voted to well, actually, excuse me, we did not vote to take a position, actually, so we took no position on SB 9 as it passed forward. I took an individual position of support, and ultimately, as it passed the state, we're now beginning to implement on it. I wouldn't want to support and wouldn't want the council to support joining the lawsuit in undoing SB 9, and so I don't think it needs a discussion there. I do think that there's the ledge priorities platform if Councilmember Davis wanted to go that route. But before simply just agendizing it on a closed session discussion, I think it should have enough support to even garner that discussion. And at the moment, I'm not willing to support that.
Got it. Councilmember Cohen?
Yeah, I'm not, I'm not interested in joining the lawsuit, so I kind of agree with Councilman Perales. I mean, whether we have differences of opinions about SB 9 or not, I think there's been a lot of overly over fear mongering about the effects of SB 9. We've had apparently one application in the entire city of San Jose since SB 9 became law January 1st, and even that one has been withdrawn as far as I know, or hasn't been completed. So we don't yet have enough information to know whether this will have any effect on the city, and I don't think it's time to be having a discussion about the effect. I do think at some point it'll be worthwhile to have a report from city staff about how this is affecting the city and whether there's any real implications on our neighborhoods. But that time hasn't arrived yet, in my opinion. So I prefer not to be having this discussion yet.
All right. Duly noted. So the motion didn't get a second, so the motion dies, and this does not move forward. So we're going to move on to open forum.
I'm going to start with Dilsa Gonzalez.
Good afternoon. My name is Ilsa Gonzalez. I'm with Somos My First Isabel Collective, and our collective, Nuestra Voz, Derecho y Voto. I entered a little bit late, so I apologize for the confusion, but I just wanted to get it right because I got to the last part, if the recommendation was to move the study session for voting rights for another 2 weeks without a date. I just wanted to make sure that that's what I heard and I didn't misunderstood. Hopefully my answer will take, my question will get answered. That was all I wanted to comment on this.
No, Dilsa, that's not quite the case. Stay on at the end of the meeting and I'll talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. Thanks for the meeting today. I guess how to do this appropriately to speak to all the board members. I was impressed with Councilperson Cohen's viewpoint on the previous item, how to consider SB 9 at this time. Good luck. I think it can be an open conversation, and we can trust it can be a community conversation. Good luck in those efforts, and yeah, I don't think we have to be so afraid. I think something is a bit settled about it, and we can simply have a good conversation how we can make adjustments with it. But I think mixed income ideas can help a lot with. To mention a few words of yesterday, I got cut off in one of my public comment times. I simply wanted to quickly offer for an item about the future of irrigation issues, that in East Side business districts, there was landscape issues that were being worked on for our future, that it was not quite jiving well between city and neighborhood businesses. That was a few years ago, that I think can be related to these irrigation issues. This may have been more residential issues, but just simply to note it, I just hope those conversations about the future of green use in East Side projects and businesses can be of interest, and a good connection can develop for all sides on such issues. A reminder in the importance of energy storage issues, that the mining of those minerals for the storage, there's important worker rights there that as we try to work hand in hand with technology and bridging the digital divide with open public policies, I hope in the future of our renewable energy ideas that we think of worker rights issues, and that they're treated well in mining all the minerals for the future of storage issues that we have. Thank you.
Ms. Rain Mendoza?
Yes, I'm here to see about the study session, so I can stay in the end as well. I want to make sure I understood right too as well. Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like I've got a few people who want to ask that question. The decision was made to move it to a later date. It will probably be in August. I'm going to return 2 rules in 2 weeks with an alternative date. For those of you who want to be included and give me feedback on like dates and times, you can email city.clerk@sanjoseca.gov. I do have a bunch of CBOs that I have a mailing list, so I was going to contact them to inform them of the rules meeting in 2 weeks, setting the new date. Again, it's most likely in August, but I'm going to work with a few people to make sure I have the correct date that everybody can attend. We will make sure it's in the evening. And if you still want to talk to me about it, you can wait till the end of the meeting, but just wanted to get that out of the way since it looks like several people have that question. Moving on to Sandra.
Notification on the information for the non-citizen voting study session should be distributed widely and not just to community-based organizations and nonprofits. Communication should be wide and from all council member offices to individuals on their email lists, included in their newsletters. Notification to grassroots organizations and neighborhood associations should be included. We do not want to miss, like occurred for the existing building electrification report, where significant segments of the community were missed in developing the report and not provided opportunities to comment. I would personally like to have information as to how to submit so that I can obtain the information in the agendas and not have to continue to check. Thank you very much for your consideration. And I really sincerely mean that you need to have a wide berth and a wide distribution on this, not just to nonprofits. Thank you.
I would like to add that my CBO list includes all of the neighborhood organizations. Gabriel Manrique.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabriel Manrique, community organizer with Luna, also part of the coalition Nuestra Voz Derechos y Voto. And I was calling for the same reason, and I just want to make sure there's a timestamp at 6:30 p.m. so we allow our community members to be part of this process, democratic process. So I'm just calling for that as well. Yes, a little confusion, but I know the day's gonna be moved probably, but I just want to have a timestamp for 6:30 so our community can be part of that. Thank you.
Brian Darby.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to bring up, I know this, you don't have a lot of control over what the Supreme Court does and stuff, but we really do need to nail down our political whatever, because we are heading directly into fascism. We really are. It's like watching the Weimar Republic again in slow motion. Really is. We're a bigger country. We had a lot more stability, but we're heading into some shaky times. And I mean, fascism, we beat fascism in the war militarily. We did not win politically, not even close. Most of them moved over here to run our space administration and stuff. And I get, there's more complex to that, but it is a horrible system to live under. People by the millions died because of that philosophy. And there's people in this country that now have access to power that actively, almost passionately support it. And it's just scary. And I just hope we remember that, because it's not that hard to do if you have enough money and you have enough people behind you. It's not that hard. And our institutions need to be furrowed and grown strong and checks and balances at the local, county, state, regional, and federal level. That's what kept that other guy from doing it when in the insurrection that was propagated by the executive branch against the legislative branch. That's exactly what it was, and that's how fast it can happen. So I really think we really need to take it seriously. Thank you.
Ruthie Callahan.
Hi, thank you for the time. Ruthie Callahan. On the dissemination of the information in regards to non-citizens voting, I would like to encourage the city clerk to contact all of the broadcast media. All of the local television stations should be sent a press release at least 48 hours in advance. It should be noted that all of the radio stations in Santa Clara Valley, as well as San Francisco, have time available for public service announcements. I think you have really missed the boat in not encouraging and using the broadcast media, because this is an issue which will affect every single person over the age of 21 in the city of San Jose of 1 million people. It's very important that you use broadcast media. This nonsense about sending it out on an email list, while it's very well intentioned, it does not have mass appeal. It does not speak to the urgency of the issue, and it does not allow the public the time to absorb the question that will be considered and to set their schedules and response time and write a brief message about how they feel. Because the last time we had this discussion, it was a Zoom mob of only one particular side of the question. And that is not democracy. As the last speaker said, we're in a very precarious time in this country. And I think that the Constitution should be reinforced and not changed. And I thank you very much for this time. And I offer my comments respectfully. Thank you.
Caller 4963. Caller 4963.
Yes, hi, Martha O'Connell. I'd like to agree with the last few speakers. I don't think that contacting the nonprofits, which I have begun to call the Greek chorus, is sufficient. I also don't think it's sufficient to just contact folks by email. I have a lot of neighbors who, even though they have an email account, they actually tell me they never check it, they never use it, and they're scared of it. So I think ads in different periodicals, in newspapers, in different communities, in different languages is one way to go. So I think we need to expand the base of the people who are being notified of this and not just go to the usual people and have the usual people call in probably in support of the issue. Thank you very much.
Back to the committee.
All right, thank you. That is it. This meeting is adjourned. Take care, everyone.